and welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur Mind Speak. I'm Lauren with Creme de Mint Design, a branding and packaging design agency, and I'm here with my co-host, Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie from Cloud Create Web Development based in Tampa.
And today we are here to welcome Alex Abbott from SmartSolve. Thank you so much for being here today, Alex.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's going to be fun to catch up a little bit and talk. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're super excited to hear more about what brought you to SmartSolve? How did you end up there?
So my background is close to 18 years in manufacturing and packaging. So most of that's been on kind of the commercial side of the business than the operations side. But SmartSolve is a company that actually I didn't know about, and a recruiter reached out to me, which I kind of took as fate, God's providence, because I haven't received a job before through recruiters. I wasn't networking. They said, we think you'd be perfect for this. And so one thing led to the other. Both my father and grandfather are entrepreneurs, so I have a very strong entrepreneur streak in me. So the chance to build a business with the technology that I discern really is among some of them that is on the front end of sustainability. That's in the packaging world. Everybody talks about sustainability. It's now become a primary conversation. I think that's without debate. But what is it? Who's really in it? Is it greenwashing? Is it real? Is it fake? These are all things that are very, very real conversations. And so I decided to join SmartSolve about a year and a half ago. And the two principal aims that I did that were, one, it is actually on the front end of technology. It's transparent. It has a real chance to make a positive change. And then two is the markets that we play in. The packaging markets are very, very big. If people are not familiar with the packaging world and the industry, if they're just consuming food and shampoo and all these things, that's great. There's no harm in that. But they probably really don't recognize that these are very, very big businesses. So SmartSolve is a privately held company out of Northern Ohio. And SmartSolve is really the foremost company in the globe, to the best of my knowledge, that is focused on bringing water-soluble technology into the packaging world as a primary option. So water-soluble material has been used in the packaging world for a period of time, but in very niche categories. And so kind of here and there, but we are working to really bring it in as a primary option right into the middle of packaging, and think it has some real end-of-life sustainability benefits.
Would you be able to explain a little bit, like in the real world, what does that mean? Like if somebody has a packaging with the SmartSolve technology, what happens for a consumer?
The most practical way I could begin the explanation is almost everybody is familiar at the parks or the ball fields, the bins, right? And the bins it's recyclable, it's compostable, it's landfill. So these are options for where the packaging industry is trying to get people to take its waste after it's been used. And SmartSolve has the ability to participate in all of the three of those categories, but it also brings forth an additional new category that we believe is highly valuable, which is drain safe, meaning the material can actually go down a drain, down a toilet, down a sewer septic system at the end of life. So one real life example is a big success for us this year is a company by the name of Daye, D-A-Y-E, came out with the world's first ever water-soluble tampon wrapper. And this is in the UK, it's in the US, it's in Boots, Walgreens, Amazon, all these kind of places. But what that actually means is the tampon's utilized in the restroom, and then the wrapper is just dropped in the toilet bowl. It's gone. So there's no need for trash can. You don't need a recycling system. You don't need home compostability. It's gone. And so we have a vision to bring that forward into food applications, laundry applications, cleaning applications, all kind of different areas. And then actually on SmartSolve's website, you'll see a video that demonstrates this, where a young person eats a granola bar and tosses the wrapper in the trash can, and mom pulls it out and says, no, drop it in the sink, and it fully washes down the sink and it's gone. And that really represents the technology we're bringing to the market.
The single-use plastics that could be avoided using that technology. I hope it takes over the whole world.
Well, your quick study. I mean, that's one of the, if you're asked to summarize what are we trying to achieve, one of the easy summary statements would be to greatly reduce single-use plastics. That would be one of the areas. So you're a quick study.
Amazing. So cool. And what inspired the creation of this business?
The company was started out of a parent company called CMC Corp out of Northern Ohio, but that company has built a business called Daymark, but they're very successful for a couple decades now in providing water soluble label material to the food service, food rotation industry, and still do today a wonderful growing business. And so that's been one of the applications that is quite successful and known is this food service, food rotation. And what that practically means is if you would go to Chipotle or Five Guys, a place like this, in the back of the house, the food prep, they need labels that dates the food for food safety. And then they also have typically prep and reuse containers for food prep. And so for a long time, those labels were paper and they get stuck to the containers and it's very hard to scrape them off. It's a mess. And so water soluble came in and you can date the containers for food safety, but then you put the containers just in a dishwasher, no labor, nobody's needed, you just put in the dishwasher and the label's gone in that process. And it comes out and the container's just ready to be used again. And so this is common. This is growing, happening every day in the U.S., the U.K., other places. It's Canada, very, very common. And so in 2016, the founder of that business, a gentleman by the name of Al Caperna, said, "We need to find a way to take this technology into packaging. Period." And Jonathan Jakubowski, who is our president, he actually was the one charged with that task in 2016. So he did market research, wrote a report, wrote a suggestion, and they liked it so much that they said, "Yeah, go do that." And so it started in 2016 with just two people. And in 2022, we became fully independent from the parent company. They're now our sister company. We're scaling up, adding people, and growing.
So incredible. What a great story. Can you talk to us a little bit about what makes water soluble packaging unique compared to other sustainable packaging options available?
Yeah, would be happy to. Water soluble is a form of paper. So the first thing to begin with is just to have this like recognition and awareness of it's a form of paper, but it's a more innovative form of paper. And so the root of this material is wood pulp, and it's from an FSC certified forest. So it has a very biodegradable, sustainable beginning in terms of the wood pulp fibers. And then, so the beginning's where you want to start, and then the end of life is what really makes it different. So we can design water soluble material to increase recycling. We have products that are helping that very effort. Recycling is the most common sustainability effort in North America and Europe today. And so we're not going against that grain, we're helping that grain. We have products that will increase recycling. We have products that can be compostable and home compostable. So that's another one of the most common metrics that's being pursued in sustainability is compostability or home compostability. And then the material, this is definitely a separator. The material on its own is biodegradable. The material on its own left to its own devices on a soccer field or in a park or on a beach, when it gets wet, when it gets rained, it's going to disperse and come apart back into this wood pulp fiber. So it's going to take care of itself on its own, left unhindered. And so you think about that, the impact that can make in the waste and the items that go to landfill or don't make it to landfill that are mismanaged, it can make a big difference. And then, like I mentioned briefly prior, the last bit is this drain safe bit. And not to get too nerdy into the packaging world, but recyclability and compostability are the big efforts that are being made. But the reality is we don't have great infrastructure for those yet. And that's part of the deterrence and why the actual effective rates are not very high. And so in steps sewer and septic. What does everybody have? What's in every household, every business, all the municipalities? What's the infrastructure that we already have readily available? It's sewer, septic, it's drains. And so we have a material that now can leverage and use an infrastructure that's already in place.
That's super interesting, and it brings up more questions actually for me. So like one thought I had was if you're creating, you have this paper and then you're printing on it, like does that mean certain ink should be printed on it in order for it to be drain safe?
So it is printable. It prints well. Think of how paper has many applications for printing, right? So water soluble paper prints well, but we do encourage, it's not required, right? I mean, a company could choose different items, but we very much encourage that you use inks that are congruent or agreeable with the fact that material is going to disperse at the end of its life. And so traditionally that's meant water-based flexo inks. Flexo is a printing technology that's very common and just a very versatile technology for many, many applications. And it's traditionally used with a UV ink. And it can work, it prints, but the UV ink is not a great story when the product disperses. And so we encourage water-based inks, which then also become drain safe and flushable. And then in our recycling vertical where we increase the recycling rates, there's some other ink technologies that are being developed right now to make sure it works all the way through that process as well. So yes, the inks are a key part of the considerations.
So do you work with clients to help them with that? And are there different appearances with the water-based ink versus some of the other inks? And what are you using instead of the UV ink?
So whether a company uses UV or water-based, that's a conversation. Most of them are a little heavier UV, but they can do water. And even if they don't do water today, it's not a big deal to transition to that if they really desire that. And then the last piece of it is digital printing. And some people have used digital for us as well. And that can be done, but typically there's a little bit of tweaking in that process to make sure that the inks aren't laid down too heavy. Because if it's just too heavy, it's a little too wet for the material. But that's just tweaking. It can be done. And so, yeah, we work with them really to bring awareness as to consider this. Companies will have different views on what end of life claims they want to make. So if a company has just a pure commitment to sustainability, they might even go to something like a biodegradable ink, which would dissolve fantastically and be the best possible story. But the give and take there is when a biodegradable ink is exposed to UV, it will sort of mute and deaden a little bit. It doesn't go away, but it's not so bright. It's not as aesthetically pleasing. But some brands say that's perfect for us. That's perfect for our consumer because we are purely committed to sustainability.
It seems like there's a lot of education that goes on with your clients as well, like helping them understand all these different options that maybe if somebody, especially if they're an existing brand already using, non-sustainable options, there would be a lot of education going on with that.
Yeah, education is really the exact word, and it's an everyday opportunity because we're not selling something that's in the market that's commoditized that everybody knows. They're just looking to go get it. That is not what we're doing. We are truly trying to bring a technology into the packaging space in a primary way. And so to do that, you've got to help people think differently, come up with different value sets, come up with different ideas. I can say with full honesty that I've never been part of any business entity where 9.8 to 10 out of 10 people are very excited when they see it. I mean, it's like almost a unanimous feedback type of environment. But the challenge within that is people going, but how would this work? Where do I put it? What do I do with it? And so we try to come up with product videos, demonstrations, show what we're actually currently doing in the market. So there's a real key education piece to help people kind of get over that hump of how and where can I apply this.
When businesses talk about sustainability in their packaging and then they mention it's like compostable, or like home compostable, you mentioned, right? I feel like a lot of just consumers don't entirely understand what that means, and potentially myself included, because you have like these home compost solutions, and of course there are some kind of, public compost spaces like you mentioned. But that means if somebody takes that item, like that packaging, and then throws it away and it goes into a landfill, does it eventually degrade as if it would be in a compost, or does it really not totally degrade? Does it need to go through this special process?
Compostability, home compostability, these are things that I think it's safe to say on a consumer basis, they're not well understood. So these are things that the packaging industry, the consumer goods industry, those of us who live it and breathe it, we're trying to pursue and do it and improve it. But I don't think it's nearly as well understood as, say, even recycling. And Europe, Italy, as an example, as a country, they have made actually very good progress on recycling from 2 or 3 years ago. They have an average national rate of like about, I think, 60%, maybe closing a little higher than that. And so this recycling idea, people have their minds around, and then if a infrastructure is being invested in, there are ways to actually get it done. But I think compostability is lags well behind that. And so you will see the bins in some people's homes. So they've done enough research to make that step, but have they really then spent the time to learn all what products are compostable, what aren't, what should go to landfill, what should go in the bin? There's a lot of questions. And so one way the industry is trying to address that is there is a increasing inertia to be certified as compostable by a nonprofit organization. And the recycling world has actually done that extremely well. There is a nonprofit certifying organization that if you're going to claim recyclability, they have to say it's recognized as such. And compostability has not been that way, but it's moving that way pretty quickly.
And would your
Wow.
product be like in that category then? It would be considered compostable?
So when we smart solve think about compostability, our instinct is that the market will be moving towards home compostability because for it ever to really have an effective rate, it's going to have to be on that level. So everything we do, we're moving at the home compostability metric. Yes, that's one of the end of lives that we want to provide.
Okay, so the packaging can either be composted or it can go down the drain, like either or.
Yeah, and it depends upon the cases and what we're designing for, but typically it can increase recycling, it can be compostable, it can go down the drain, or it's just readily biodegradable. So if it does make it to a landfill, it's going to have a very good end of life story. Typically, it's within, I think the statistic is the ultimately biodegradable is within 60 days that it'll degrade, and our material hits that in most cases.
So many consumers, I mean, I think the stat is upwards of 50% that they rather buy a product when they know that it does have a genuine eco-friendly aspect. And this is almost like the perfect solution as far as the more simple plastic packaging that could then just be essentially even carelessly tossed and still be a good end of life story, as you mentioned. That's amazing.
My wife and I, we have 4 kids. Life's busy. They got this, they got that to go to. And so I think about practical examples, like how easy is it to imagine the mom and her child at a soccer field, right? After school, early evening, and she hands them an Uncrustable, which, Smucker's has done an amazing job with that brand, just incredible growth. But she hands them Uncrustable, and nobody's fault. People are just busy living life, and that wrapper just tumbles away on the soccer field, right? Wouldn't it be great to know that wrapper is just going to turn into a wood pulp based material? That's such a great solution compared to a fossil fuel based wrapper that's going to tumble around and get in the forest. Some type of animal's going to step on it when it rains, when it storms, the wind. None of that's going to really reduce it or make it go in any different direction. And so I think those are really compelling cases to where we have to think through the packaging all the way to its end of life. But I just always try to do my very best to encourage all of us as consumers and then the companies that really are sustainably minded, because the consumers do drive the bus. If we continue to look and demand and buy more sustainable solutions, guess what? That's what the marketplace is going to provide. And if we continue to just not pay any attention to that and disregard it, the market's going to be slower. So we do have an important voice in generating what demand.
Can you share some examples of how your face stock, your label stock, and your pouch stock are being used by businesses? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you could talk a little bit more about that and like what business are picking up your product.
Yeah, so like our pouch stock, I mentioned the feminine care application with the world's first ever water soluble tampon wrapper. We also have several cleaning applications where dry powders are being put into a pouch, and then that pouch or stick pack pours out the dry powders, which is the cleaning material, and then that stick pack is just it just goes away. One company markets it as melt away packaging. That's what they market it as. But it just goes down the drain. And then our face stock is used for quite a different array. We have one company actually that's used it for wrapping paper. So all that wrapping paper waste on, in the Christmas season, then it just becomes soluble. And to reduce that need, you could use it for card stock, board stock, all these kind of different applications. So it just really depends upon what application is a company, is a brand committed to, and we can adapt to a lot of different contexts in terms of projects.
And talk to us a little bit about, can you use this biodegradable, this dissolvable packaging with food products? And what applications can you not use it with? Like, I think we talked about like, shampoos and things like that. Like it wouldn't work for something like that, but it would work for, I think you said like sauces, like if we're talking about like food. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so one of sort of the limiting factors we've had as a current business is our flexible packaging material, our pouch material today. It is fully drain safe. It's got a 12-month shelf life, but it does not have a water or oxygen barrier. So that has limited us from getting into the food space, because with food, you're going to need some type of barrier to keep that food product fresh until it's used. And so we actually are coming out at the turn of the year. We have a patent that's enabled us to have a brand new technology coming forth. But this water soluble technology will now also offer a barrier. And so this is going to open up a whole new world to us as SmartSolve. And it was one of the big reasons that I wanted to come and be a part of this, because now items that do need a bit of barrier, but the companies that say, I'm in the food business, I need a little bit of barrier, but I really want to be sustainable. I want to transform our portfolio into a way that is on the front end. Our consumers will not only recognize it, they'll appreciate it. We're going to get scorecard that are just better than industry average. We now have a solution to give them that they've not had before. And really, that's the way to view it, is a technology platform that we can now develop towards a specific customer innovation that's required. But it's real exciting to be soon to be able to offer to the market what it has long thought to have been a unicorn, right? My 5-year-old little girl loves unicorns, right? This is thought to be a unicorn for so long. How can you have something that is compostable, something that helps recycling, something that's drain safe, and oh yeah, it has a barrier? That almost sounds like those are opposites, and that is exactly what we're coming to market with. That's exactly what our technology is patented, and we're really excited about it. There's a big trend in what we call ready to drink, which is all these electrolyte type of drinks, the liquid deaths, the liquid IVs, and even instant coffees. These are stick packs and they have a powder in them. So why not use our new technology for that, where the powder can be dried in the bottle, or be poured in the bottle, poured in the drink, and then that stick pack simply goes away down the drain. So these are type of applications that we find really, really appealing. I also think the confectionery zone would be fantastic. There's so much candy and cookies and sweets and these things that have single use one time, right? Single use one time. And in some cases, they don't need a lot of barrier. I mean, a Hershey's Kiss is not getting a lot of barrier doing what it's doing. And so these are some of the food areas that we are interested in. Food, as a general statement, food's
Okay.
going to need some level of barrier. So it's the
So
new
like the
technology.
granola bar that you're showing
Yes.
on your website, that's going to be part of this
Yep.
new technology that comes out next year. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
And here we are, October 16th.
I
January
know.
is not hard to
Yeah.
wait.
Right
So,
around the corner. So
yeah.
And
awesome.
even
Awesome.
with your existing product, I mean, you think about even you get an Amazon package with, something that's made of cloth or whatever, it always has that plastic film. Zara packages or all these other clothing brand packages, they send all of their clothes in this kind of
Yep.
protection. Like these are massive brands, massive industries that get so much heat now, and hopefully will continue to get more and more heat as this technology becomes more known and people realize there are solutions. So long these huge companies have been saying, oh, there's no other option, what are we going to do? But now a
Yep.
solution is actually being created, so it really does sound like a unicorn. I've never heard of this kind of solution before, and as someone that's I'm originally from Europe, so I grew up in this kind of atmosphere where it's
Yes,
extremely
absolutely. They're
important.
well ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
important. So I love to, and that really is what the US is so great is this innovation. And that's exactly what you and your company are doing. So that's so exciting.
We just look to get more and more exposure, try to tell our story. And the more products that we get out there, I think it's going to be fun because I think when we get products out there and people see it, I think it's going to catch more and more momentum as people understand what they can do with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the more momentum you guys gain, the more I'm sure you'll be able to put into more research, more products, and solve more and more problems. I think this is a problem that as a society we're all very aware of, and we've been grasping at straws for a solution that makes sense. I would love to hear what challenges have you faced? What would be some of the barriers you would say that stood out to you in building this business?
So when you're very innovative, you have to tell your story because your story is not out there. The very definition of innovation means that it's new, it's different, right? And so just the burden of storytelling and the value of exposure, it's pretty unequal for us because we can't be, if I could figure out how to be in 5 places at once, I'd be making a lot more money. It's we just can't figure that out. And so always trying to feel like you prioritize outbound storytelling is a challenge. And anybody who has any type of business knows that you can't, it's hard to spend all your time doing that because you have a business to run, right? Also, just the reality of we're trying to grow our business so we can invest while we also invest in our business. The analogy John, our president, likes to use is we're building the plane while flying. And that's a challenge too because you want to be totally focused on this big future that you believe in, but then you're also trying to just grow and develop the products you have so you can invest in the big future as well. And then the last part that I would say it's really hard, but to me it's been stimulating. There's lots of packaging industry trade shows where the big brands and big suppliers, everybody are there, and there really isn't anybody else working on what we're working on. I just would ask anybody, go walk the 200 booths or whatever and come back and tell me if you find somebody who's working on it because you're not going to find it. And so it's super stimulating. It's super exciting, but it goes back to point one, which is there's just a very big burden on it in education, storytelling, sort of that outbound messaging. And then where do you prioritize? Where do you focus? Because these markets are just so big.
With sustainability being like a huge buzzword right now, how do you address skepticism from companies or consumers who might doubt the effectiveness or safety of water soluble packaging?
Yeah, sustainability, as I said, I think it would be an arguable point from a very broad packaging perspective that sustainability is now among the primary topics. You have everything from just use less fossil fuel based plastics to compostability, recyclability, to literally just lightweighting parts. So we're going to keep the entire same product composition. We're just going to use less of it. You have people looking at reducing dosages, so how much is used, which that's a great part of sustainability too. It can't just be the package, it also needs to be the stewardship of how much stuff we just use. And on and on and on this whole conversation goes. And then there's really two sides to it, which is one is sort of like the fixed or firmware side. And what I mean by that is like a product is made and a product is recycled or a product goes to landfill. Like that's a very tangible side of it. And the other side of it is the more ecological side, which is the whole nature side of what's the circularity, what's going back into the environment, how healthy is not just the product, but the whole process of this product's life cycle, how healthy is it? And so so many considerations. And I think the main thing to look for in a company is their claims. What kind of claims do they have and how transparent will they just show you a test? If you say, oh, that you claim to be home compostable, what testing? If they'll just show you, if they'll just reference, that's a great start. If they don't tell you what they've tested and they won't show you what they've tested, I would be pretty cautious in that way. And then as far as drain safe, we get lots of questions about that. And I would give two quick answers. One is we pass the same testing that toilet paper does. We pass it with flying colors. So toilet paper is something that's been used and going down sewer and septic for a long time, right? Causing virtually no issues. We pass that same testing. The other answer I would give is we recently got recognized by the Association of Plastic Recyclers, which is the entity for recycling in North America, and they had never approved a paper label for recyclability because it hurt the wastewater process. The paper got gunked up and adhesive. We became the first technology ever to pass that. And so we had to do very well in the wastewater treatment process to get recognized as such. So those are two examples I would give. And then I would really dispel this idea that the consumers would have a new behavior for drain safe. I actually really dispel that. I think that it's much easier for a consumer to understand to use a toilet, a sink, a kitchen sink, a bathroom than it is to ask them to take a widget back to the store, than it is to take it to sort it for recycling, certainly than it is to take it to the tumbler in the backyard and do home compostability. So I take a professional issue with when people say, oh, that's hard to do, but let's go ask them to do all these other things. I don't think that's the case. I think with the right product education, the right video content, and a marketing basis, I think that consumers would jump on this real quick.
I
Yeah.
agree completely. With your future product launches, you mentioned being able to package food and stuff like that, especially dry things. And I know this is a big question because you guys are already creating miracles essentially with what you're doing. But would you see that maybe in the future you would address things like hard plastics? My instant thought goes to, for example, there's the famous story of, I believe it's Coca-Cola, that's the largest waste producer in the world due to all of their plastics. Is this something that your company hopes to tackle as well? Maybe, I know that that could be in many years, but is that kind of in your hopeful future?
No, I appreciate the question. It's a good one. So we are a company that believes, hopes, and expects that we're going to grow by a significant amount. And so we've had to already begin to create a framework of how, what that could look like. And our answer really is we are going to be committed to zero waste packaging technology. Within that, there's no limit as to say, would we acquire this company or would we come up with this new invention or this new product line? I don't think in a future state it would necessarily have to be limited to a water soluble material, but I think it would have to be limited to a story, which there are several avenues and ways to get there, of zero waste. That this packaging technology had a premier end of life, because that's what we're passionate about, is trying to encourage and affect change to, let's think about the end of the package lives first, and then we'll build out the functionality, the aesthetic, the manufacturing ability, all these things. Because for so long, certainly for the 2 decades I've been in the game, it was actually the exact opposite. So the first consideration was, does the consumer want it? The second consideration was, is it aesthetically pleasing? The distant third was, can we make it? Can somebody manufacture it? But certainly 15 years ago, nobody was saying what happens after you make it and after it's sold. And so we want to flip that script. Our goal is to say, when we begin a product development process, let's say, what end of life do we want this to achieve? And then let's build a product from that point forward.
That is amazing. What an interesting shift in perspective that you really don't think about as a consumer, because you kind of assume that the companies are having these things in mind. So to hear that it was actually, we've come a long way in 15 years, in other words, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Are there any other like long-term goals or innovations or expansions that besides the one that's happening, which is a huge one that's happening next year, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I think it's really the conviction that I'm passionate about is in the most common in North America and Europe, but most common, I mentioned this prior, is really the effort for recycling. That I'm totally for that. I think it's great. I think it's necessary. It's a tool that's going to be used for a long time. But what I would add is we need more than that. We just need to provide better solutions into the end result. And if that's recycling for this brand, that's great. If it's composting for this one, if it's drain safe for that one, I just really this philosophy of saying um, all these efforts are good. Let's not demean or criticize any of them because we want all of them to succeed. There's so much challenge for all of it, but let's add to it. If something else comes along, let's use it when and where and how we can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. How do companies work with you? Like how if somebody on this podcast is listening and they're interested in working with you, like do they have to be at a certain level, like certain size before they can work with you? Or do you work with companies of all sizes, startups all the way up to large companies?
Yeah, no, we work with companies the whole gamut, and that's happening right now. We have partnerships and development opportunities with very large CPGs, and we do with solopreneur companies. So it's everything in between. I would say it's different, right? If you have a smaller, mid-sized company, it's typically fairly easy to get to that decision maker and find out if it really works, what they really need, and can we get it to go forward, which we like that for speed, right? That's good for speed. Like, let's find out if we can do this or not do this. But then the big, large CPGs offer a huge potential as well. And really, the key for them is they need to see us and they need to call me as a technology platform. So these companies, they have so many different brands, so many proliferations of projects and spider webs of projects that it's not so much about, oh, let me use this for X. It's they would see us, they would give us the feedback of, I now have a whole different tool that I can deploy across brands, across the portfolio. Let me think about how and where it fits. And that's the role that we would fit extremely well into. So the smaller companies, it's probably going to be more, this is what we need. Does it fit? We love that conversation. The bigger companies, it's going to be more about, hey, we SmartSolve have innovated, we have developed, but then how can we marry that with what you want an innovation to meet with? And let's bring those things together and bring them to the market. But we are currently doing both, and I'm sure we'll continue to do both.
It sounds like it doesn't matter like what size company they are, they can reach out to you and find a way to work with you on having disappearing packaging.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we're happy to talk to anyone who is really committed to the sustainability
Yeah,
initiative, really wants to move their business forward. We're happy to talk to anybody.
amazing. Well, Alex, thank you so much. And Natalie, do you have any other questions that have popped up?
Yeah, I just did have one last question, just so we and our listeners fully understand kind of the where you fit on the lineup for a brand. So you have these solutions. How does it work when someone works with you? Do you then give them the material and they have their manufacturer then package it using your material, or how does that part work? Just so people know where you kind of fit in the line of their product.
Today, what we offer is face stock, label material, pouch material, and flexible packaging materials. And our primary goal is to be a raw material supplier. So we will provide the material to the person who's going to be the company that's going to be actually manufacturing your good. That's what will happen in most cases. There will be some differences to that, but in most cases, you'd work with us, you'd specify our material in, you would test qualify our material, and then we're going to send that material to the converter who's actually making the product that's going to go either to a fulfillment center or to like a manufacturing warehousing site.
Wow, wonderful. Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. So I'm sure other potential manufacturers would be interested in hearing your story as well, because they could then work with their clients and add this as another solution for them
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, the very front end sustainability contract manufacturers who they sell to brands, they talk to brands, they're fulfilling for brands. Those are also great partners for us to have because they could qualify our material and then they could offer it to those companies that they're servicing, and that would be a great fit.
Awesome.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much. We really enjoyed learning all about Smart Solve and everything there is to know about disappearing packaging. It's fantastic. Thanks so much for being on our podcast.
No, Lauren and Natalie, thank you guys. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thankful for the time, and it was fun.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And that's another episode of Entrepreneur Mind Speak. Thank you. Bye bye.